Hi folks, welcome to what I think is a pretty damn sexy book haul. We're going to go back in time, starting with the ones that I've acquired most recently and then over the last few weeks, in various different places. Some online, some lucky finds in the wild, some new books for new book money, and some which were brought very kindly across the Atlantic for me by a friend. So where am I going to start? First of all, we have a Subterranean Press edition of the collected short stories of a certain John Wyndham in his various guises. Many of them were written under a pseudonym at the time, which was constructed of one or more combinations of his full name. And I think this contains everything there is. I do have quite a few of his paperback collections, but they're all pretty tatty and old and not in very good condition. So this is pristine. Obviously, it's new. And very nice it is too. It's called Logical Fantasy, which for a while was the name given to science fiction. I think possibly even by John Wyndham himself. I forget, but it didn't stick, clearly. But still, that's very nice. It's a really nice edition. Cloth boards, nothing particularly fancy on the inside. Nice paper stock. Very nice indeed. Lake of Darkness by Mr. Adam Roberts, friend of this channel. There's an interview by him a few weeks back. If you haven't watched that already, then I recommend having a look at that. We had a nice chat. So that's his newest book. It's been out a few weeks now. I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's about a black hole, and there's spaceships and acts of murder involved. It's a murder mystery in a black hole or something. Anyway, looking forward to reading that. A Juror for Julia, which is a short story collection collecting the short stories of Ken MacLeod from the last 18 or so years, which he's selected himself for inclusion in this special edition, including one that he's written specifically for this edition. And this is published by Newcom Press, a signed limited edition, and it's signed by Ken, obviously, but also the illustrator, a guy called Fangorn. I presume that's not his real name. That's a nom de plume. And it's numbered, this is number 24, I think I'm right in saying, of 100 or maybe 150. So it's pretty limited edition. Very nice it is too. Then we've got at the schmaltzy popcorn end of the science fiction market, Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, the author, or authors actually, there's two of them, of The Expanse, which I really enjoyed, and I'm not ashamed to say it. And I'm looking forward to getting stuck into something else by them. I think this is the first book in what will be a trilogy, so it's not the 9-book commitment that The Expanse was. I think I'm right in saying it's set in a completely different universe to The Expanse. It might be a kind of tenuous link, but I think it's separate. I don't know, honestly, but I'm looking forward to reading that. It looks good. And this one actually isn't new, although it's in as new condition. There's another Ken MacLeod, Giant Lizards from Another Star, which is a collection of stuff. There's some poems, some short stories, and a novella. There is some essays and some reviews and some kind of con reports from science fiction cons around the place. So it's a real eclectic mix of Ken MacLeod related stuff that isn't his novels. And this was published actually back in 2006. It's a Nesfa Press edition, and it's pretty handsome stuff. It's nothing fancy on the inside. It is a limited edition. This is a signed, numbered limited edition. There were 1,200 printed. The first 10 were numbered. The following 190 were numbered and slipcased and signed and presumably kissed or something by Ken MacLeod, and then the remaining 1,000 were numbered. So this is numbered, limited but not signed. Very pleased to get that. That actually completed my entire Ken MacLeod collection, and you will see this. Will you see it or will you have seen it? It depends which order I end up posting these in. You may already have seen it if you watched the Ken MacLeod collection overview. If not, then look out for it. So that's all the new books no, it's not quite actually. Last weekend on Sunday afternoon, I met a friend who's come over from the US. It's Whitney, who runs the Secret Source of Storycraft YouTube channel. And she was over for a couple of weeks. She's gone to Glasgow now for the Worldcon and the Hugos and all that sort of jazz. But we met in London on Sunday afternoon to do some book shopping, and we hit a few places. We went to Scoob Books, where I found a few things. I found Salvage Rights by Ian Watson in the Gollancz, a sort of late 80s, early 90s style of Gollancz, 1989. It's a short story collection, and it's in pretty good condition. It's a little bit yellowed on the text block, but not too bad. And then also in Scoob Books, I found a copy of Ice by Anna Cavan, which I didn't have a copy of. I'd like to read. It's meant to be a seminal work of science fiction. It's a kind of climate change or the impacts of where glaciers kind of spread around the world and it all goes chilly and cold. No one knows why the ice has come, it says on the back. And then talking of ice, I found a pretty recent reprint of Snow Crash, but it's not a book that I have. Again, another classic of the genre that I haven't read. I do like, normally anyway, Neil Stevenson, so I'm assured that that's a good read. And then in the same visit to Scoob Books, I found Cathani by Eric Brown. I'm gradually finding his books in the wild. When I come across them, I'm picking them up. This is a trade paperback edition. I don't recall now if it was issued in hardback as well. It might well have been, but this would have been the first paperback edition, I think, from 2008. So that was Scoob, and then we went to an Oxfam bookshop, which was a Drywell. Neither of us got anything there. And then we went to Forbidden Planet, the mega store on Shaftesbury Avenue, which I've been to, but not since I was like a kid, in my late teens. So it's the first time I've been there for ages. I think we did pretty well. They had a sale section, which obviously attracted my attention. I bought a few books for a princely sum of 99p each, including this hardback edition of Inherit the Stars, which is a collection of space opera short stories and novellas, or an anthology rather. I did actually have this in a trade paperback, but since it was only 99p for the hardback, it would be rude not to get it. I will sell the trade paperback on. And then there were two Nina Allen books in the sale section, also for 99p each. Again, rude not to. I've been looking for these for a little while. I'd like to get them in hardback, to be honest, but they are actually quite uncommon and quite pricey to get in hardback, I think. So there's The Rift by Nina Allen, who latterly was married to Christopher Priest, unfortunately died earlier this year. And then there's The Race, also by Nina Allen, again 99p, can't go wrong. By all accounts, those are excellent books, and her writing is really nice. I have not yet read any Nina Allen, so I want to fix that with one or both of those in the not too distant. Then I was very happy to find The Turing Test, which is a short story collection of Chris Beckett's. This was first published in, I think, 2008, something like that. Yeah, 2008. It's got an introduction by Alistair Reynolds, who's basically bemoaning the fact that hardly anyone's heard of Chris Beckett, and that's an injustice from a science fiction point of view, from a quality point of view. I initially thought that this must have been lurking on Forbidden Planet shelves since 2008 because it's signed by Chris Beckett. Yeah, Chris B. But I think, although it doesn't indicate that it is on the usual kind of publication page, even though Elastic Press, who published this in the first place, have actually gone out of business a number of years back, I think this is a recent reprint because the price is different. It's now $9.99. When it was first published, it was $5.99. So this is not an original first edition. It's a reprint, but it's signed, so happy days. And that one did not cost me 99p. It cost me $9.99, which is its sticker price. Also in Forbidden Planet, I was tempted into buying yet another book by Adrian Tchaikovsky, Saturation Point, which is a novella. It is big writing, quite narrow text block, and it's 150 pages. So it's a novella, would have been an actual book 50 years ago. But I was in a frenzy of book shopping, so I didn't really notice it at the time. And it sort of half registered by the point that I paid at the till. But this was £25. It's a narrow book, and okay, it's signed, but £25 is the sticker price. That's its publication, they use RRP. And I think that's an absolute rip-off, 25 quid for a 150-page book in this day and age. A book's only worth what the idiot public is prepared to pay for it. So I handed my money over. I don't know if it's any good. Like I've said many times, I find him a bit variable, a bit hit and miss, although his misses are usually pretty good, very, very readable misses. Right, where are we? Sticking with Whitney. She did a couple of things for me. She brought me a book rather, from her collection, or that she'd found that she really enjoyed and thought I might enjoy as well. It's Inherit the Stars by James P. Hogan. I don't know anything about it other than it's got a skeleton in a spacesuit, which is immediately interesting. She really loved this book, and she's currently hoping that I do too. We'll have to wait and see. It does look good. Thanks very much. And then I caused Whitney a packing issue by having several books delivered to her in the US so that she could courier them over the Atlantic for me, so I wouldn't have to pay extortionate US postage. I would argue that what I did was make some room in her bag for books when she took them back, so I was doing her a service, really. Anyway, she bought me A Quantum Murder by Peter F. Hamilton, which is the second, I believe, of the Greg Mandel novels, which were the first books that he wrote. They were published 2 or 3 years before these were issued in hardback in the US, so I think these were issued at about the same time as the Night's Dawn trilogy in the US. They were paperback originals in the UK. There is not a hardback issue of this book in the UK. So I have sought them out. The first book I got in the UK. This was bought from a US seller, and Whitney carted it across the Atlantic. And then also the third book in that same series, The Nano Flower. I I had read these, but it was a long time ago, and I remember really enjoying them. So I'm hoping that they're good. What I'm mainly enjoying at the moment is the really cheesy 1980s, 1980s vintage pictures. I think the books are actually from the 90s, mid 90s, but they look very 1980s. And these two books are both, I would describe them as new condition. The text block is completely crisp and white. The dust jackets are completely crisp. They're in protective jackets. There's not a mark on them. I think they're in really nice condition. And the first one's in pretty good nick too. So that's a set of Peter Hamilton's first 3 books in hardback, the US editions. Not first editions, because that would have been the paperback originals in the UK, but still, that's the set that I've decided to collect. Months and months and months ago, I came across, I think it was in a second-hand bookshop in St Albans. I was visiting for the day, and I found books 2 and books 3 of the Quintaglio Ascension by Robert J. Sawyer, which is about a planet full of dinosaurian aliens, possibly transported 65 million years ago from Earth. And I thought, happy days, I'll find the first book online. Well, it turns out you can't find the first book online. These are a reissue in Tor, and they must have had a short print run. And you can find them in the UK, but they're really expensive for some reason. And then you can find them in the US, but then you've got to pay extortionate shipping. So I found a copy. I think this still cost me £10, so it wasn't cheap or anything. But obviously I didn't have to pay the transatlantic shipping because they were brought across for me. But so I now have that full set. For all I know, it's rubbish. But having got the books 2 and 3, I felt obliged and compelled to get book 1 in the same livery. So I feel satisfied to have the full set, if nothing else. And then what have we got here? The Time of the Fourth Horseman by Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough. I don't think this is her first novel. I think she published 1 or 2 before this, but I think this is her first acknowledged science fiction novel. I'm not especially interested in the other 2. I'm not yet a completist of her work. I recently read False Dawn by the same author and really enjoyed it, so I thought I'd look for anything else I could find, and this was the one that I could find. It is as the name suggests, a rather apocalyptic tale. So this is a sort of disaster novel. We wiped out all the deadly diseases. And then there's basically things start going wrong. Diseases start cropping up, and it's contagious as a pandemic, and then there's all sorts of other disasters. It's a disaster sort of squared or cubed, I think. It's quite a pretty narrow book, a couple hundred pages, a bit like False Dawn. 180 pages, in fact. So it's a fleet, a swift read. That's like the work of an afternoon if you were determined and ignored your mobile phone for a while. So looking forward to reading that. I really enjoyed the first one. And then the one I'm really pleased to get, I bought book 2 of the Plenty series by Colin Greenland, the Tabitha Jute series, a few months back in hardback. It's a UK edition. It's really nice. And then I've subsequently been looking for a nice copy of the trade paperback, which was the first edition in the UK, would have been the first world edition, too. And they're pretty hard to find. I've got a pretty tatty mass market paperback edition, which is certainly good enough for a reading copy. And I was under the impression that there was not a hardcover edition, no hardback of this book, and there isn't in the UK. But in the US, there was a hardback edition as a science fiction book club edition published by Avon Nova. So I thought I would get this. It didn't cost me very much, and obviously I didn't pay for the shipping. So Paperback Plenty in hardback. This was published, or printed rather. It doesn't say. Very nice. I particularly like the art. I was wondering, it's got half a baby, which I think it's not a baby at all. It's one of the characters in the book, but it does look very peculiar. And I wondered who that was by, and I think it is, Walter Velez. On the off chance that Whitney watches this, thank you very much again for bringing all of those things across the Atlantic for me. Much appreciated, and for keeping me company on a book shopping visit. She bought way more than I did in Forbidden Planet. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Cornwall on holiday just for a few days with my wife, and we popped into a couple of bookshops, very much at my instigation, on the way down actually. And it was pretty slim pickings, but I did find this Ilario, which is the sequel. I think it's only loosely connected to the events in the first book, Ash, Secret History, which is the one that she's most famous for, I think, by Mary Gentle. And so this is it's set in the same world. As I say, tenuously connected to Ash, which I hear very, very good things about. I have that in a similar size trade paperback, so it sort of matches. I really would like to get around to reading it, but Ash is 1,100 pages. It's a bit of a commitment. And this is pretty thick too. I don't know how many this is. Less, 700, 650, something like that. And then in the same bookshop, I found another Mary Gentle book, which is different again, 1610, A Sundial in a Grave. And these are, you've got a fantasy vibe. They're sort of alternate history, but they've got like science fiction elements in them, I believe. It's certainly an alternate history. I think I'm going to like her writing. And I've got a few of her other books as well. So I'm gradually sweeping up her oeuvre. I don't think she's written that many. So these are books that I've hunted out online, some more deliberately than others, honestly. So I've gradually been collecting Paul Macaulay's back catalogue, and a couple that I didn't have, that I initially spent time looking for in a hardback and couldn't find them, is because they weren't issued in hardback in the UK. They were the paperback originals and the first edition was in the trade paperback. So The War of Maps is the first one. I like a good map, and this is a giant artificial world surrounding an artificial sun. One man, a keeper of the peace, a policeman, is on the hunt. His target was responsible for an atrocity, but is too valuable to the government to be truly punished. Instead, he's been sent to the front lines of a war to use his unique talents on the enemy. Blah, 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 blah. And it's a world of maps, apparently. I like a map. And that sounds... so it's a dazzling novel of the far future from the award-winning author of... This isn't just thrown together, the award-winning author of Austral, as in Southern, which is by the same author, Paul Macaulay, obviously. And again, this wasn't issued in hardback, as far as I can tell. It was a paperback original, and this was the first edition in the trade. And this one is set in, so it's a genetic engineering type thing. So Austral is a husky, apparently, an edited person adapted to the unforgiving climate of the Antarctic Peninsula. Feared and despised by most of its population. She's been a convict, a corrections officer in a labour camp, a consort to a criminal, etc., etc. Bleakly beautiful, Austral is both a finely honed character study and a powerful evocation of landscape and change. So that's set in Antarctica. Love it. I do still have a few of his books to find, and when I get the full set, we'll do a collection overview. I've only read one so far, but I did enjoy it. So more collecting than reading at the moment with Paul Macaulay. I will get to them. And then I did a few different instances of titting around on World of Books and other things, looking for books somewhat at random. So I've got Hummingbird Salamander by Jeff Vandermeer, who is most famous for the Southern Reach trilogy, which starts with Annihilation, which I got primarily for the pretty cover. There's a lizard on the back and a hummingbird on the front. Probably slightly foolishly, I've bought Kon-Tiki Coda, which is like an extra fifth add-on to a quartet of novellas by Eric Brown, with some help from Keith Brook. It's very slender. It's almost atomically thin. In fact, it's really a short story. It's 30 or 40 pages tops. And so there are another four, which are again either published by PS Publishing, which is this one is, or by New Compress. I can't remember, but they're limited editions, pretty tricky to find, certainly in hardback. So I've just given myself a job to do. I found this for like £4 or something. It's The Difference Engine by Bruce Sterling and William Gibson, Kings of Cyberpunk. It is a UK first edition from 1990. I believe it's the first edition anyway. Probably more accurate to say it's the hardback. I think that was what came first rather than the paperback for this one. I do have a paperback edition, but it's just the Science Fiction Masterworks, so I'll get rid of that and keep this one. And then I've got somewhat on a similar line, actually, although it didn't seem to be at the time, is Stephen Baxter's Anti-Ice. So the Difference Engine is like a steampunky thing where the Victorians get ahead. And this is a similar vibe. So it's again set in Victorian times, I think, and the premise is essentially they discovered nuclear power early, and that jumpstarts the Industrial Revolution and gives us a form of propulsion. And so this is set in that kind of world. And I thought this was a fairly recent book, but actually it's from back in 1993. So it would have been one of his earlier books, possibly his, I'm actually not sure, but it'd be one of his earlier books. And that is in pretty nice condition. It's the jacket's in really good condition. The text box in it a little bit yellowed. What else have we got? Yeah, talking to Paul Macaulay. The King of the Hill, which is a short story collection, actually one of his earlier ones. I think this is from back in the early 90s, 1991. Again, pretty slender. It's probably got 8 or 9 short stories in it. So I'm certainly behaving like a completist when it comes to Paul Macaulay at the moment. And then finally, for this little pile, don't go away, Notes from the Burning Age, which is a more recent book by Claire North, an author whose work I've really enjoyed. I've only read a couple. The First 15 Lives of Harry August was one of my favourite books of last year. And then The End of the Day, which was also very good. She's got a knack, I think, for in her science fiction works anyway, of taking a pretty ordinary set of circumstances, but just tweaking them, turning one of the dials and changing the rules basically of normal life, and then lets the story go. Right, this next lot are from a visit to my local second-hand bookshop, the Oxfam Bookshop. It's a different part of Reading from where I live, go there quite frequently. And I took my camera this time. It's been a bit patchy recently. There have been several times I've gone in the last few months where I've come away with nothing or one or two books and it really wasn't worth showing the footage. This time, let me just say that it was worth it. For those of you that enjoy a bit of shelf browsing footage, then knock yourselves out. It's just a few minutes. I will put a chapter in so you can skip past it if you just want to see the books. I can only apologise for the background music. They're playing it in the shop. It's interesting. Maybe. Now I need to check. I'm not sure that I've got Dawn. I need to check. I might have it, but if not, I'm definitely getting that. I'm not sure about Modran. I'll have a look. Michael Bishop. Don't think I have that either. Bumper Day. I'll have a closer look at this, I think. John Barnes, 1980s footballer. Not known for his science fiction. I rather assume it's a different John Barnes. Again, I shall have a look at that. I've got, I think, one of these books. I've got Survival, which I think is the second Extinction Game. So this is the third, in fact, so I'll get that. I'm gradually acquiring those. What's that then? That looks like, yeah, teenagers, werewolves. Hotwire, that sounds intriguing. That sounds like a cyberpunky thing. I shall have a closer look at that. So we'll have a look at that. Ah, Pluto Shine. Well, this is turning out to be a bumper trip, potentially. I've been wanting to read this for a while. Rachel Pollock. I don't think I have that. It's like a post-apocalypse thing. Not sure I'm interested in that. Let's see. I've got that. If you haven't read it, get a copy if you see it. It's really good. Turner Prize for Best Novel, you say? I'll check a look at that. I need to check. I might already have a copy of The Female Man. Shatner Tech War. Nope. I have that already. Haven't read it yet. Charles Sheffield's always worth a look. I might have that already. I'll have to check. Steel Beach, I don't think I have. If I didn't already have that, I would very much get it. That's, I think, a sequel to Spin. I don't have that. Now, if I didn't already have nearly a full set of Ian Banks in hardback, then I might get that, but I do. I've got a copy of Quarantine, and I probably don't need that. We'll check just in case. Nope, I already have that. Don't know Ian MacLeod. And there's a David Webber. Let's see. A new Honourverse novel. Number umpteen, I expect. I will double check that. Robert Reed. Again, I'll have a closer look at that. Alright, well, I think this is shaping up to be a pretty good one. I will have a closer look at these and I'll see you in a moment. Let's go. In approximately the order that they, very approximately, the order that they appear in the video, here are the books. First is David Brunch's Modran, which is a little bit creased on the spine, but otherwise in pretty good condition. It's a US Avon science fiction edition from 1971. So, you know, it's the same age as me, 53, and it is in, like me, a little bit wrinkled, but otherwise in okay condition, he said, immodestly. And then I got Octavia Butler's Dawn, which is the first of, I think, a trilogy, Xenogenesis, which I've only read one of her books, Kindred, which I did really enjoy. I thought the writing was excellent. And then something called Catacomb Years by Michael Bishop, I think a British science fiction author. This one's set, they were the great years, the years after the USA was dissolved, after the domed cities were sealed, after the aliens from 61 Cygni had arrived, and before they had converted to Christianity. So I don't know, sounds like humanity's kind of underground. Looks very intriguing. Then I'm not sure how I'll get on with this, but I was intrigued. It's Anthony Burgess' 1985, which is a little bit of a piss take, I think, of 1984, obviously by George Orwell. Ingenious, chilling and darkly comic, 1985 combines a devastating critique, no less, of Orwell's 1984 with a terrifying vision of the future. As memorable as A Clockwork Orange, it is as powerful and unsettling as anything Burgess has written. So I don't know, does he like amp it up even more than Orwell did in 1984? Is it a kind of parody? I don't know. Sounds interesting anyway. And then I have Benford. I just pick these up as a matter of course if I see them, provided I haven't already got them, of course. Gregory Benford, The Sunborn. He's kind of hard, sciencey science fiction, but a pretty good read. I think his character's done pretty well, considering it's pretty sciencey and dry otherwise. But I've enjoyed the 2 or 3 that I've read. John Barnes, not somebody that I've heard of. Orbital Resonance. And I was happy to find this by Gary Gibson. It's Doomsday Game, which is the 3rd, if I remember rightly, of a trilogy. I have book 2, I've had it for a while, and now I've got book 3, so I just need to find book 1, and then I can read the damn things at some point. This is a very kind of dense book. I think it's on good paper stock. And this is from 2019, so not that far back. That was a paperback original. Then we've got some cyberpunk action with Hotwire by Simon Ings, I should say. And apparently he burst onto the cyberpunk scene with his first book, Hothead, and this is a couple of books later by him. I haven't heard of him or anything that he's written, so I'm intrigued by that. And we've got some first contact business with Gwyneth Jones, who's the author of Castles Made of Sand, which is in the science fiction masterworks. So this apparently won the James Tiptree Jr. Memorial Award and was nominated for the Arthur C. Clarke. A deadly game of sex, politics and betrayal played out against a backdrop of alien invasion. And then I was very happy to find this, so I've been meaning to get it for ages. I probably ideally would like it in hardback, but this will do for now. Anyway, Pluto Shine by Lucy Kissick, who is a astrophysicist or neuroscientist or something. Anyway, she's an actual scientist. But she's written this, nuclear physicist, something like that anyway. I think she's based at Oxford University, but she's written a story which is kind of about terraforming kind of Pluto, told through the eyes of a 10-year-old child who is mute, traumatized by an accident that tore her family and the base apart. Her elder brother is determined to keep her that way, only adding to the intrigue. Lucy Kissick's outstanding debut novel is a tense and exciting exploration of the possibilities of space colonization and the dangers that come with it. Apparently very well written, and it's not certain whether she'll write any more science fiction because she's now kind of full-time scientist, but I do know of a few people that have full-time jobs as academics that do continue to write, so who knows. And then we've got Rachel Pollack in the Masterworks, Unquenchable Fire, and then Maxine MacArthur, Time Future, which is a debut novel. Again, never heard of her, don't know if it's any good, might not be, but it seems to get a good write-up. Impressive, a confident and assured debut, says Locus on the front of the book. Renowned feminist classic, Joanna Russ, The Female Man, in the Masterworks. And then we've got Charles Sheffield, The Spheres of Heaven. I've got several of his books now, I haven't read any yet, but apparently he's a good read, reasonably light, kind of popcornish, but somewhat hard science fiction, I think. I would maybe like woefully mischaracterizing there. Apologies if that's the case, you can let me know. And then I've got, I think it's either the direct sequel or one of the follow-on books to Spin, which is a book I'd like to read but I don't have, by Richard Charles Wilson. And then John Varley, who's an author I have read a couple of things by and very much enjoyed, Steel Beach, which I think is set... Steel Beach is one of the very few novels that actually deserves to be compared to the works of Robert Heinlein, full of shocks and surprises, packed with humour and wit, sheer entertainment. Yes, set on the moon. So 2 centuries since the invaders kicked humankind off Earth and onto the steel beach of Luna's artificial habitat. But there's an ace reporter on Luna's tabloid, The News Nipple, of all things, is bored, restless and suicidal. Powerful and stunning and exciting new novel. I've read a couple of John Varley's books, as I say, very much enjoyed them, and I am assured that this is a fun read. And then I found Quarantine, which is a trade paperback. I don't recall now if there's a hardback that precedes this. I previously had a B format or A format copy of this in the same artwork, but this would have preceded that, so I've kept this one. And then it's a Nancy Kress, After the Fall, Before the Fall, and During the Fall, which is, I think, is a sort of disaster, post-apocalypse type thing, alien invasion maybe. And then George Zabrowski, Macro Life. Haven't read anything of his. I've got a couple of his books. And then I was interested to find this book, The Lee Shore by Robert Reed. I think this is, so he's the guy that wrote Marrow and the books that followed, amongst other things. And this is his first book. It's a hardback first edition, a UK first edition anyway. Actually, it's a US first edition, really a world first edition of The Lee Shore by Robert Reed. Inspired by Hemingway's Islands in the Stream, apparently, but wholly original in conception. Set on a bizarre planet, apparently. The Lee Shore. Well, that's everything for this haul. Thank you for watching, as always, and until next time, goodbye for now.